All right, guys, here we go. This is the second lesson for this week, week 6. Again, we're focusing on this idea of the normal curve here. What we did in the first lesson was we just looked at how we could find percentages using that empirical rule, which was the 68, 95, 99.7% rule. Now, you don't have to actually memorize how to do that. You just need to remember how to fill in our percentages. First, let's go through, read the question, and then we'll answer some information here. But this is how we're going to use the normal curve to find some specific information on a set of data. So let's read through the example. And I'm going to kind of underline and highlight some things that I think are important. Probably just underline. I don't know how to highlight. A research was performed on the IQ scores of a firm that has 800 employees. Now, they're not giving you that information for no reason. Let's make sure we emphasize there's 800 employees. The scores are in a normal distribution. When it says that, it just means we can use this curve over here to the right. We can use the normal curve. The mean is 100. Now, that definitely seems important. And the standard deviation is 15. So what we know is the mean is 100. The standard deviation is 15. Again, those are our Greek symbols for mean and standard deviation. So what we can do is we can use all of that information to set up our normal curve. Now, the first thing that I want you guys to do is when you see this normal curve, fill in the percentages, what we did on our last lesson, right? If you remember, we used the 68, 95, 99.7 rule to figure out our percentages. If you don't remember, all you had to do is remember the 1/2 of it, right? It's 34%, 13.5, 2.35, and then 0.15. And that's going to be the same on both sides. 34, 13.5, 2.35, and then 0.15%. Again, the easiest way you can check that is you whip out your calculator, make sure that 1/2 of it adds up to be 180. I'm going to do that real quick here. Plus 2.35 plus 0.15, and yes, that does give us 50. So check, we put the percentages right. Now, the second thing that we can do, because it's a normal curve, we can fill in some information. What we know is this line in the middle, right? This line right here. Whoops, sorry, I used the wrong color. This line right here in the middle, that's our mean. So we can put our mean right there of 100. Okay, now if you remember, this is telling us how far away each piece of data is, or the percentage of data within a certain amount of standard deviations. So we're just going to use the standard deviation of 15 to fill in the rest of our table. As you jump to the right, we're adding standard deviations. As you jump to the left, we're subtracting. So we're just going to go to the right. This next line is 115 because we just did 100 plus 15. And we're going to keep going. Another jump to the right. We're adding, here I'll put adding 15 more. So that's 130. Another jump to the right. We add 15 more. That's 145. Okay, so we went 100, 115, 130, 145. Those are IQ scores. Now we can do the same thing, but instead we're going to go to the left. So instead of adding one standard deviation, we're going to subtract. So we're going to go 100 minus 15. We subtract 15. That gives us 85. Again, we subtract 15 more, and that gives us, it should be 70. And then we subtract 15 more, which gives us a bottom line of 55. So those scores are key for us because what it's telling us is we have these range of scores. The lowest IQ score in this range using our normal distribution is a 55 IQ. The highest is 145, And from that, we can find a ton of information. Now, I'm just going to come up with some questions right here on the spot, and we're going to answer them. So let's say question 1. These are the types of questions they can ask you. I'm just going to put Q1. What percent of employees scored between, let's say, 70 and 115? So that's a question they can ask. What percentage of employees scored between 70 and 115? So what you're going to do is you're just going to look at your normal curve, right? Look, where do you see 70? Where do you see 115? We got 70 here, 115. We add up the percentages that are in between it, so it's pretty easy once you get the curve down. We're just going to go 13.5 plus 34 plus another 34, and that's going to tell us the total percent of employees that scored in between 70 and 115. So we're going to go 13.5 plus 34 plus 34, and you should get something like 81.5. Now keep in mind, it's asking us for percent, so make sure you put that 81.5% of employees scored between 70 and 115. Let's do one more. Again, where they're asking us percentage, we'll go question 2. What percent of employees, let's say, scored greater than 115? So it's a little bit different. I didn't give you 2 scores to look in between, but you just need to know, what does that mean? So in this case, we're looking at what percentage of employees, in this case now, scored greater than 115. I'm trying to write here. I'm still trying to write. I'm erasing. Greater than 115. So that means now this is 115. All of the scores greater would be going to the right. So we just add up all the percentages to the right of 115, because that would be greater than. So we're going to go 13.5 plus 2.35 plus 0.15, right? We just added up those 3 percentages to the right of 115. Again, just take out a calculator and you can add that up, right? 13.5 plus 2.35 plus 0.15 equals, in this case, we get 16. Again, it's a percent, so make sure you put that percentage sign there. So that's one way we can use the normal curve. You have this normal distribution, and you can find what percentage of employees, in this case, scored in between these 2 different IQ scores. Now, the next thing that we can do, and what we're going to end on for today, is we're going to look at, what if instead they said how many employees scored, let's say, between 55 and 85. So in this case, they're asking us how many employees instead of just what's the percent. But first, let's figure out what that percent is. So what's the percent of scores between 55 and 85? 55's here, 85's here, so we're just going to go 13.5 plus 2.35. 13.5 plus 2.35, again, make sure you have a calculator. That gives us 15.85. So we know that 15.85% of the employees scored in between 55 and 85, but we want to know how many. That's where that other piece of data comes in. What we know is there are 800 total employees. So we need to find what is 15.85% of 800, because that will then tell us how many employees scored in between 55 and 85, right? We're just going to find 15.85% of 800. Now, the easiest way to do that is by multiplying. We're just going to go 800 times our percentage. We don't use 15.85. If you remember how to multiply by percentages, we're going to take that decimal and scooch it back to 2 points, and we're going to multiply it by 0.1585 in this case, because it's 15.85. If it was a solid 16%, you would just multiply by 0.16. So we're going to go 800 times 0.1585. That gives us about 126.8. Because we are talking about employees here, we're not going to say, oh, 126.8 employees scored between 55 and 85, because you can't have 0.8 of an employee. That doesn't make much sense. Everyone is a full person, no matter what they look like. So let's just say 127 employees would be your answer there, right? So we could go through and do the same thing for question 1 and question 2. We already have the percentages there. If you wanted to find how many employees instead, you would just do like 800 times whatever 81.5% is, which is 0.815. Again, just moving that percentage over twice. Or if we wanted to do it for question 2, the employees greater than 115, we want to multiply by 16%, 800 times, in this case, 0.16. Again, moving that decimal over twice. You don't have to do that. I'm just saying that's the extension there. So notice, once you fill in the normal curve, the questions actually come pretty easily. Just make sure you're looking at if you're finding the percent, like we did for questions 1 and 2, or if you're finding how many employees, where you find the percent and then you multiply that percentage to the amount of employees. Again, make sure you are able to set up that normal curve. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Have a good day.